Brought to you by the Astro Youth House chapter from STEM Arts Lab. Space on Earth is a student-led podcast that inspires listeners who are curious about space to explore the wonders of the universe through the voices of young thinkers, creators, and dreamers.
Each episode blends personal curiosity with scientific discovery, from the mysterious depths of black holes to the practical impacts of space on Earth, like GPS, climate science, and medicine.
Hosted by STEM Arts students from Taos, New Mexico, this podcast draws connections between space, art, and science, how these things all impact us here on Earth, and their meaning to humanity.
You'll hear raw, insightful conversations about topics like light pollution, the overview effect, lunar exploration, and the societal impact of the space race.
Whether you're into exoplanets, dark energy, or just stargazing from your backyard, Space on Earth makes space personal, accessible, and inspiring. We believe that space isn't just for astronauts and scientists, it's for everyone.
Join us on this adventure as we explore the cosmos from Earth, one story at a time.
Special thanks to the Lore Foundation for helping launch this podcast.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Space on Earth. I'm Taylor.
I'm Tulsi.
And we're here with you guys today to talk about Aurora borealis, also known as the Northern Lights. And we're going to be going over what are the Northern Lights, how do they form, where to see it, like how do they impact Earth, and stuff like that. So Tulsi, do you want to get us started with what are the Northern Lights?
Yeah, the Northern Lights or Aurora borealis are a natural light display. And it's mostly seen where the two poles are, so the North and South Pole. It's got like three most common colors, which would be green, purple, red, and blue. It appears as glowing curtains, arcs, or spirals in the sky. I've seen it maybe twice in my life. But even though it's as pretty as it is, there is some science behind it. Taylor, do you want to tackle that?
Yeah, so the sun has activity going on its surface all the time. There's constantly stuff moving around. And a lot of times the sun will emit these charged particles, and we call that solar wind. And we'll see this happening a lot in solar storms, which just lots of solar wind emissions. Those particles hit Earth's magnetic field, and the magnetic field kind of acts like a shield around most of the Earth, and it guides those particles towards the poles. Then once those particles collide with the gases in our atmosphere at those north and south poles, we get different colors that show up from that. And like you were saying, there's a few different colors that we see. And the colors that we're seeing in those hues, that's dependent on what gases are seen a lot inside of that part of the atmosphere. So for example, oxygen makes a more green or red light, while nitrogen makes a more blue or purple light. This also means that the aurora borealis can appear different colors in different elevations because the atmospheric makeup is different. And energy from solar particles is transferred into light energy, which is just more of how like the conservation of energy works. So from the sun, that enters our atmosphere and it interacts with what we have going here, and it results in beautiful colors in our night sky. Tulsi, where and when do people typically see the Northern Lights?
It's usually at night. Although I have seen them in the daytime, it's like mostly at night. It all really depends on the latitude. And something called the auroral oval, which is it's basically there's a dynamic ring-shaped region around the magnetic poles where auroras typically occur. So that would be places like Alaska, Norway, Sweden, Canada. And they do sometimes travel down to the USA, but it's mostly up very high.
Yeah, so like you said, in really intense solar storms, sometimes we're getting so many of those particles that it's visible from a lot further south. I've even seen some of the Northern Lights in New Mexico. However, here it appears more like a reddish glow in the sky compared to the green streaks that are typically photographed and thought of as the Northern Lights.
Right, and those are because the people taking the photographs are in places like Sweden and Canada that are much, much closer to the poles.
Yeah, totally. And also, fun fact, I find from personal experience that cameras do typically pick up the lights a bit better than human eyesight. So that's a good thing to know. If you ever come across them, take a photo. And these northern lights do impact our life on Earth occasionally. So scientists study auroras to understand space weather and what is going on with the sun, how is that interacting with our atmosphere, all of that good stuff. And also, really intense solar storms can impact usage of satellites, GPS, and even power grids. And currently, we still have a lot of space missions and research going on to explore solar activity.
Speaking of the impact on Earth, has it impacted our art or anything like that?
Totally. So, the sky and nature is such a huge inspiration for art in general. And the Aurora Borealis is an incredible example of that because it's a really beautiful sight. It has this really cool movement and unpredictability, and it feels very alive, which can bring in a lot of inspiration for artists. So, one example of Aurora Borealis in paint is the painting Aurora Borealis by Frederick Edwin Church. And this is one of the most famous paintings of the Northern Lights, and he really captures how dramatic and emotional the site is. Also, a lot of photography, like I said, cameras can kind of catch it a bit better, especially long exposure photography, which is a big
Mhm.
deal. And we were talking about this kind of in our last episode, if any of you guys caught that, we were talking about the sound of space. And we talked a lot about sonification, which is the process of taking data, whether that be visual or numerical, and turning it into sound. Artists like Olafur Arnalds, I really hope I'm pronouncing that right. He's an Icelandic musician who uses the Northern Lights as a lot of inspiration for his ambient music that kind of reflects those lights. And some ways that we can do that through sonification is like slow waves that you see in the lights is more like soft melodies, and that's how it translates into music. Well, also sudden bursts can be like crescendos in music.
Hey Taylor, have you personally used Aurora Borealis or even the night sky as inspiration for art?
Yeah, I like to make a lot of art, and the night sky is a huge inspiration to me, and like I said, I've been lucky enough to see the Aurora Borealis both here and in Iceland, which is it's such a beautiful view up there. And so I think it's really inspiring and really beautiful. What about you, Tulsi? What do you think about like the Aurora Borealis in art?
I've made a painting or two of it like over the mountains because where I lived, we lived by the Rockies, and so you would see it sometimes like hanging above the the mountains. And it really is a gorgeous sight. And it's interesting to know that it's like a magnetic reaction and what the different colors mean.
Yeah, totally. And that's what I really love about it is the Aurora Borealis is such an incredible intersection of science and natural wonders and how we kind of can transform that into art and into research as well. So I think that it's just a super cool topic. So thank you all so much for joining us today. And hopefully you learned a bit more about the Aurora Borealis. And like always, you guys can totally reach out to us here at Space on Earth. You can check out the STEM Arts website to know more about what we're doing and to send us any ideas or questions for future episodes. And then we can actually answer the questions that you guys have. So, once again, thank you so much. I'm Taylor,
I'm Tulsi.
and we'll see you next time.
Bye.